All right, let's talk about something that just dropped like a geopolitical bombshell. Pakistan and Saudi Arabia, two nations with a history as intertwined as the desert sands, have reportedly signed a defense pact so secret, so understated, that it practically whispers of high stakes and simmering tensions. If you listened closely, you could almost hear the ink drying with the metallic tang of gunpowder. This isn't just a casual agreement. It's a commitment that reportedly binds them in a mutual defense obligation, stating that if either country faces aggression, the other will respond with all military means. And yes, for those keeping score at home, that all military means explicitly, unequivocally, includes Pakistan's rather substantial arsenal of around 170 nuclear warheads. Give me the next few minutes and you'll quickly understand why this quiet handshake has sent shivers down the spines of strategists in Israel, Tehran, and even Delhi, forcing them all to scramble and redraw their most sensitive war plans. This isn't just news. It's a fundamental shift in the regional chessboard. Section 1. The paper that doesn't exist. Imagine a scene straight out of a spy thriller, because that's apparently how this whole thing went down. The Strategic Mutual Defense Agreement, or SMDA as some are calling it, was supposedly inked in September 2025. Not in some grand, gilded hall with flashing cameras, but in a closed-off hangar at King Salman Air Base. Seriously, a hangar. There were no photographers, no joint press conferences with smiling diplomats, certainly no glossy, publicly available PDFs to dissect. Just two signatures on an 8-page document, followed by a handshake that, by all accounts, lasted a mere 3 seconds. Blink, and you would have missed it. Yet, despite this almost theatrical level of secrecy, the ripples were immediate and profound. Within hours of this whispered agreement, Gulf stock markets didn't just react. They jumped, showing a nervous excitement about the perceived new stability. Meanwhile, Iran's state television, ever the purveyor of official outrage, was quick to condemn it as an illegal nuclear transfer, even without seeing the document. And in India, analysts weren't debating. They were quietly, methodically running complex Excel sheets, calculating missile flight times from Karachi to Riyadh, trying to quantify the new threat matrix. The document itself, if the whispers are true, is strikingly concise. Sparse was the adjective both diplomats I spoke to used, and they used it independently. No sprawling annexes, no convoluted footnotes to clarify ambiguities, no convenient exit clauses for a change of heart, just 8 pages of stark, unambiguous language. The core of it, the very definition of mutual aggression, is distilled into one potent sentence. Any kinetic or non-kinetic action against the territorial integrity of either state shall invite immediate and unrestricted response. Now, let's pause on that word, unrestricted. In the nuanced, often deliberately vague world of diplomatic jargon, unrestricted isn't just a strong word. It's practically screaming. It's the difference between agreeing to sell rifles to an ally and agreeing to potentially share warheads. It implies a level of commitment and a breadth of potential retaliation that goes far beyond conventional military aid. It signals that all bets are off, that the gloves are truly coming off, should either party perceive its territorial integrity to be threatened. This isn't just a pact, it's a declaration. Section 2. Why now? So why this sudden dramatic pivot? Why now? When the regional chessboard feels more volatile than ever? Well, you don't have to look too hard to see the converging pressures that pushed Riyadh and Islamabad into this unprecedented embrace. First, let's talk about the United States. For decades, American security guarantees were the bedrock of Gulf stability, but that bedrock has started to crumble. We're seeing the U.S. shrinking its Patriot missile footprint in the Gulf, signaling a gradual strategic pivot away from direct heavy military engagement in the region. Riyadh watched with growing unease as Washington seemed to hesitate, to equivocate, when Israeli jets buzzed Qatari airspace, a clear violation of sovereignty and a challenge to regional norms. The conclusion for the Saudis was stark. American security guarantees, once seemingly ironclad, now come with asterisks, fine print, and a growing sense of unreliability. They needed a new guarantor, a more immediate deterrent. Then there's the Abraham Accords. They were hailed as a new dawn of regional cooperation, but they're wobbling, perhaps even fracturing. The recent Israeli strike on Hamas officials in Qatar, a sovereign nation and a significant GCC member, sent shockwaves. It wasn't just an attack. It was a perceived overreach that made many in the Gulf question the true nature of these new alliances, and whether they truly offered security or just exposed them to new risks. The delicate balance was disrupted and trust, once tenuous, eroded further. And of course, there's Tehran. Iran's centrifuges aren't just spinning, they're spinning faster than ever before. Its nuclear program continues to advance, its regional influence through proxies remains robust, and its rhetoric remains defiant. This persistent, escalating threat from Iran demands a robust counterweight, something more tangible than increasingly unreliable Western assurances. On the other side of this equation, we have Pakistan. Let's be blunt. Islamabad is broke again. It's a recurring theme in Pakistan's economic narrative, and it's a powerful motivator. The country is perpetually in need of financial lifelines, whether it's oil on credit to keep its economy running, or timely remittances from its diaspora to shore up its foreign reserves. Consider this. A single Pakistani worker in Saudi Arabia sends home on average about $450 a month. Multiply that by the estimated 2.4 million Pakistani expatriates working in the kingdom, and you're looking at a staggering sum that finances roughly 12% of Pakistan's entire import bill. That's not just significant. It's existential. Pakistan simply cannot afford to alienate its most generous financial patron. So, when you piece it all together, the pact becomes a two-way street, a symbiotic relationship born of necessity. For Riyadh, it's a security umbrella, a tripwire deterrent against an emboldened Iran and a less reliable West. They get a nuclear-armed partner willing to stand by them. For Islamabad, it's a cash umbrella, a vital financial oxygen line that keeps its struggling economy afloat. They get the much-needed financial aid, deferred oil payments, and continued employment for their massive workforce abroad. Each side, no doubt, believes it's the smarter negotiator, the one getting the better end of the deal. But history, as we know, has a funny way of settling such debates. Only one will ultimately be proven right, and the stakes couldn't be higher. This is less about friendship and more about survival. Forged in the crucible of geopolitical shifts and economic desperation. Section 3, the nuclear fine print. Now, let's wade into the truly sensitive territory, the nuclear dimension. Pakistan is a declared nuclear power, possessing a diverse arsenal that includes tactical nukes mounted on its 60-kilometer range Nasser missiles. Saudi Arabia, on the other hand, owns precisely zero nuclear weapons. This is where the secret alliance becomes truly revolutionary, and frankly, terrifying. The agreement, we're told, doesn't involve the physical transfer of warheads. That would be a clear, undeniable violation of international non-proliferation norms and would trigger an immediate global crisis. Instead, it's about the transfer of deterrence. Pakistani military sources, speaking off the record, have indicated that the language in the pact is carefully chosen. Their nuclear capabilities will be made available if existential thresholds are crossed. What exactly constitutes an existential threshold? That's the million-dollar question, and it's purposely, strategically vague. It's a deliberate ambiguity, designed to create maximum deterrence with minimum specificity. Analysts widely interpret this as, if Iranian missiles or any other significant threat were to genuinely menace Riyadh or other critical Saudi infrastructure in an existential way, then Pakistan could, within a matter of hours or days, mate its warheads to Saudi-delivered launchers. And here's where it gets even more interesting. The Saudis already have the launchers. Back in 1988, they quietly acquired DF-3A Chinese missiles, long-range ballistic missiles capable of reaching Iran. These aren't new. They've been refurbished, upgraded with better guidance systems, and are ready to go. What they've lacked until now was the payload, the nuclear warheads. Now they reportedly have a nuclear-armed neighbor willing to, shall we say, rent that payload when the chips are down. Is this legal under the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, NPT? Absolutely not. The NPT is designed precisely to prevent the spread of nuclear weapons to non-nuclear states. But here's the crucial caveat. Pakistan isn't an NPT signatory. It's one of the few nuclear powers operating outside the treaty's framework, which means it plays in a gray zone, a murky, dangerous space the color of battleships. The International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA, the global nuclear watchdog, can frown all it wants. It can issue condemnations and reports, but it has virtually no enforcement clause against a non-member state like Pakistan. This situation creates a dangerous precedent, challenging the very architecture of global nuclear arms control and opening a Pandora's box of potential proliferation. It's a game of brinkmanship, and the rules are being rewritten in real time. Section 4. Israel's Nightmare. For decades, Israeli strategic planners have built their entire defense doctrine on a foundational assumption: no Arab state would ever host nuclear weapons. This wasn't just a hope. It was a deeply ingrained tenet, a red line that underpinned their entire security posture. That assumption, with the quiet signing of this pact, just cracked. And for Israel, a crack in that foundation is an existential threat. The implications are immediate and terrifying for Tel Aviv. From an Israeli perspective, a Pakistani bomb potentially stationed west of Riyadh, deep within Saudi territory, isn't just a theoretical concern. It shaves a critical 8 minutes off their warning time compared to a launch originating from Sindh, Pakistan's southern province. 8 minutes. In the context of ballistic missile defense, 8 minutes is an eternity. It's the difference between a successful interception and a catastrophic failure. This geographical shift fundamentally alters the strategic balance and shortens the fuse in an already volatile region. Tel Aviv's response, predictably, was swift and decisive, even if publicly understated. Just 3 weeks after the alleged signing date, Israel quietly floated a tender to double its inventory of Arrow 3 interceptors, its advanced high-altitude anti-ballistic missile system. This wasn't just an upgrade. It was a rapid, urgent expansion. More tellingly, they held an unannounced air drill over the Negev desert, specifically practicing mid-trajectory interceptions at a staggering 120-kilometer altitude. This wasn't about conventional threats. It was a clear signal that they were preparing for the highest-end missile threats, far beyond what regional actors typically possess. Even more revealing, Israeli officials, who usually maintain a tight-lipped silence on such matters, started whispering to select journalists and diplomats about the prospect of a Sunni NATO. And yes, they explicitly included Pakistan in that hypothetical alliance. The irony, of course, is rich enough to be a punchline. Israel, a country that famously refuses to confirm or deny the existence of its own nuclear arsenal, is now deeply, visibly worried about someone else's nuclear opacity. This development forces Israel to confront a new complex security paradigm, one that could potentially bring nuclear weapons into the heart of the Arab world, forcing them to reconsider every aspect of their long-standing strategic calculations. It's not just a nightmare, it's a waking one. Section 5. Iran's Counter. Across the Gulf in Tehran, this pact isn't just a concern. It's a direct challenge to Iran's long-standing regional doctrine. For years, Tehran has operated with a twofold strategy: steadily enrich uranium to maintain nuclear leverage, and cultivate a robust network of proxies across the Middle East to project power and influence. The Saudi-Pakistan pact forces Iran to fundamentally rethink both pillars of its strategy. If Saudi Arabia can effectively hide behind a Pakistani nuclear deterrence, then the utility of Iran's carefully cultivated network of proxies, from Hezbollah rockets in Lebanon to Houthi missiles in Yemen, significantly diminishes. These proxies are designed to exert pressure, to create leverage, to act as a deterrent themselves. But against a potential nuclear umbrella, their strategic value, while not entirely eliminated, certainly becomes less decisive. The calculus changes. Tehran's initial response was a mix of public outrage and quiet, decisive action. While Iranian media vociferously denounced the pact as an outsourced invasion, a clear attempt to frame it as a foreign imposition on the region, privately, officials were admitting the stark reality. This deal significantly raises the threshold for any future missile adventure or overt military action. The cost of miscalculation has just gone up dramatically. This realization prompted concrete steps. Iran's parliament quietly, without much fanfare, approved a 17% hike in the Revolutionary Guard's budget. This wasn't just about maintaining current operations, it was about enhancing capabilities. Simultaneously, a squadron of upgraded Shahab-3 missiles, Iran's medium-range ballistic missiles, capable of carrying both conventional and potentially nuclear warheads, was strategically moved to Bandar Abbas. This port city, located on the Strait of Hormuz, places these formidable missiles well within 700 kilometers of Riyadh, a clear message of continued deterrent capability. But the cleric's bigger worry isn't just military, it's diplomatic. The most chilling silence for Tehran came from its supposed allies, Russia and China. Both major powers remained conspicuously mum on the deal, offering no condemnation, no public objection. This silence wasn't benign. It was a deafening signal that they are, in fact, perfectly fine with a multipolar Gulf, one where new alliances shift the balance of power. When your own backers won't object to a pact that directly threatens your regional ambitions, you know the geopolitical ground has shifted beneath your feet. It's a stark reminder that in international relations, loyalty is often fleeting, and self-interest reigns supreme. Section 6, India stuck in the middle. Now, let's turn to India, a nation that finds itself in an increasingly uncomfortable position, caught between complex loyalties and escalating regional tensions. Delhi enjoys warm, vital energy ties with Riyadh. A staggering 40% of India's imported crude oil flows from Saudi fields, making the kingdom an indispensable economic partner. But India also shares a long, often volatile 300-kilometer border with its perennial rival, Pakistan, a border that has seen multiple wars and constant skirmishes. The Saudi-Pakistan pact throws a massive wrench into India's strategic calculations. Any Indian contingency plan against Pakistan, any military maneuver or punitive strike, now potentially risks Saudi retaliation. This isn't just about a rhetorical threat. It's about tangible military implications. Indian carriers, for instance, routinely practice strike paths over the Arabian Sea, typically assuming no third nation radar coverage. But with Pakistani AWACS, Airborne Warning and Control System, aircraft now potentially based at Tabuk in northwest Saudi Arabia, a strategically vital location, that math changes entirely. Suddenly, Indian air operations become visible, vulnerable, and potentially subject to Saudi interference or intelligence sharing with Pakistan. Delhi's answer, predictably, is to accelerate its own nuclear program, specifically its MIRV, multiple independently targetable re-entry vehicle capabilities. This technology allows a single ballistic missile, like India's Agni 5, to carry multiple warheads, each capable of striking a different target. The implication is chilling. One Agni 5 missile could theoretically drop 5 separate warheads across 5 different Pakistani cities, a devastating response designed to overwhelm any missile defense system. Beyond its own nuclear advancements, India is also actively courting Abu Dhabi, seeking an alternate airbase or at least enhanced military cooperation in the region. The aim is to diversify its strategic options and reduce its reliance on air corridors that might now be compromised. However, the UAE, while a partner, is wary. It doesn't want to become collateral damage in a heightened regional standoff, carefully balancing its own interests. This entire situation is classic balance of power geopolitics, a delicate dance of alliances and counter-alliances, except in this new era, the weights on the scales just got significantly heavier, the stakes impossibly higher. India, once able to maneuver with relative freedom in its regional rivalries, now finds itself operating in a far more complex and dangerous strategic environment, where its economic partners are increasingly aligning militarily with its adversaries. Section 7. America's shrinking sway. For decades, the bedrock of U.S. foreign policy in the Gulf was a simple quid pro quo: oil for security. The U.S. guaranteed the safety of Gulf oil supplies and the stability of its allies, and in return it received reliable energy resources and strategic influence. But that era, my friends, is not just ending. It's wheezing its last breaths. Washington still sells its M1A2 Abrams tanks and F-15 fighter jets to Riyadh, but those transactions increasingly feel like relics of a bygone age, rather than symbols of enduring strategic partnership. The Saudi-Pakistan pact is more than just a defense agreement. It's a polite yet firm notice to Washington. It signals that the Gulf states are no longer content to wait for U.S. midterm elections or presidential policy shifts before making life-or-death strategic choices. They're charting their own course, driven by their own perceived threats and interests. The most telling anecdote here is the reported U.S. diplomatic attempt to obtain a copy of the pact's text. They were, according to sources, politely but firmly told, "It's classified by both countries." Think about that for a moment. A Cold War ally, a nation whose security was historically underwritten by American power, is now classifying its defense treaties from Washington. This isn't just a snub. It's a profound shift in allegiance and trust. It indicates a growing independence, a willingness to forge alliances that don't necessarily align with or even inform U.S. strategic interests. The Biden administration's response, deploying another carrier group to the region, while visually impressive, feels largely like optics. It's a show of force, a projection of power, but it addresses the symptom, not the underlying condition. The real leverage, diplomatic, economic, and even military that the U.S. once commanded in the region is steadily shrinking. When your long-standing clients start hedging their bets, when they seek multiple patrons for their security, you're no longer the sole indispensable patron. America's shrinking sway isn't just about a decline in influence. It's about a fundamental reordering of power dynamics in a region where Washington once reigned supreme. Section 8. The economics beneath the missiles. Beyond the rhetoric of defense and deterrence, there's a powerful, undeniable economic engine driving this alliance. Saudi Arabia, ever the financial anchor for Pakistan, literally saved Islamabad from sovereign default just last year with a crucial $3 billion bridge loan. This new defense deal, however, sweetens that pot considerably, reportedly expanding it to a staggering $10 billion in direct financial assistance, coupled with deferred oil payments worth an additional $1.2 billion annually. For a country perpetually teetering on the brink of economic collapse, this is nothing short of a lifeline, a financial oxygen mask. But the economic relationship isn't a one-way street. In return for this largesse, Pakistan has reportedly agreed to station 25,000 of its troops for training inside Saudi Arabia. On the surface, it sounds like military cooperation. But delve a little deeper, and you see a fascinating economic dynamic. Pakistan is effectively subsidizing Saudi salaries with Pakistani rupees. These troops are skilled, disciplined, and represent a cost-effective security force for the kingdom, while their salaries, paid in part by Saudi Arabia, contribute to Pakistan's foreign exchange reserves and alleviate unemployment pressures. It's a win-win, economically speaking, for both militaries. There's another, even more strategic economic play at hand. Riyadh is reportedly pushing for a significant 40% stake in the Gwadar refinery project in Pakistan. Gwadar, located on the Arabian Sea, is a deep-sea port with immense strategic potential, offering Indian Ocean access that crucially bypasses the volatile and often choked Strait of Hormuz. For Saudi Arabia, this isn't just an investment. It's a direct route to diversify its oil export infrastructure, lessening its reliance on a choke point that could be easily disrupted by regional adversaries. If this all sounds a bit like old-school colonial powers establishing strategic ports, well, welcome to neo-colonialism, but with some distinct Chinese characteristics already present in the region. The Gwadar port itself is a cornerstone of China's Belt and Road Initiative, and Beijing already holds significant influence there. This pact, therefore, isn't just about security. It's about fusing security rents with energy rents. It's a sophisticated form of petro-security mercantilism, where military alliances are underwritten by vast financial flows and strategic economic investments. It's a new model of global power, and it's being forged in the deserts of the Middle East and the mountains of South Asia. Section 9. Risk of miscalculation. History, as they say, doesn't repeat itself, but it often rhymes. And when it comes to secret pacts and ambiguous alliances, the rhymes are often tragic. Secret agreements, by their very nature, are historically brittle, prone to misinterpretation and catastrophic miscalculation. Take the 1839 Treaty of London, for example, which guaranteed Belgium's neutrality. It was meant to ensure peace, but then 1914 happened, and Germany's violation of that neutrality triggered World War I. Or consider the 1894 Franco-Russian alliance, initially touted as strictly defensive, until the mobilization clock started ticking, and it spiraled into a global conflict. The danger in the Saudi-Pakistan pact lies precisely in its carefully crafted ambiguity. While it aims to deter, it also creates vast gray areas that could easily lead to unintended escalation. Consider the profound lack of integration between the two militaries. Pakistani and Saudi officers have no joint war college, no shared operational manuals, no fused command structure. In a high-stakes, rapidly unfolding crisis, this lack of seamless coordination is a critical vulnerability. Imagine a scenario: a local commander on the ground, perhaps under intense pressure or acting on incomplete information, could invoke the pact, believing it applies to their specific situation, while the leadership in Islamabad or Riyadh might be hesitating, debating, or simply unaware of the full context. This disconnect, this potential for a sub-strategic actor to trigger a massive response, is terrifying. Now add nuclear fog to that already volatile mix. The deliberate vagueness of existential thresholds means that in the heat of a crisis, one side's interpretation of an existential threat might not match the other's or might be far lower than intended. This is how you get a modern-day Sarajevo moment, but with better satellites and far more destructive weapons. Analysts, ever the purveyors of grim statistics, are already putting odds on such scenarios. They give it a 17% chance of accidental escalation within the next 5 years. Now, 17% might sound low, but let's be clear. That's not lottery low odds. That's a disturbingly high probability for an event that could lead to regional or even global catastrophe. It's a risk that should make every policymaker and citizen sit up and take notice. Section 10. Escalation Ladder. Let's paint a grim picture, an escalation ladder that illustrates how quickly things could unravel, moving from a regional skirmish to something far more terrifying. Each rung on this ladder has a historical precedent, a moment in the last 40 years where similar dynamics played out, albeit without the nuclear shadow. Level 1. Drone strike on Saudi oil field blamed on Iran. This is almost a given. A drone swarm, perhaps from a proxy group, hits a major Saudi oil installation. The Saudis, with U.S. intelligence, quickly blame Iran or an Iranian-backed militia. It's plausible, deniable, and sets the stage. Level 2. Pakistani intelligence feeds targeting data to Saudi jets. The pact kicks in. Pakistan, leveraging its advanced intelligence capabilities, provides precise targeting information to Saudi air forces, allowing them to conduct retaliatory strikes against Iranian assets or proxies. This isn't just about defending Saudi territory. It's about actively participating in offensive operations. Level 3. Iran hits back at Pakistani radar crews on Saudi soil. Iran, recognizing the Pakistani involvement, retaliates directly. It targets Pakistani military personnel, perhaps radar crews operating in Saudi Arabia, demonstrating that its reach extends beyond just Saudi targets. This makes Pakistan a direct, undeniable combatant. Level 4. Islamabad moves Nasser batteries to Al-Qasim. Faced with direct attacks on its personnel, Pakistan makes a dramatic, overt move. It deploys its tactical Nasser missile batteries, capable of carrying nuclear warheads, to Al-Qasim, a strategically central region in Saudi Arabia. This isn't just about defense. It's a clear, unmistakable signal of nuclear readiness and a massive escalation of the deterrence posture. Level 5. Israel, fearing a two-front nexus, strikes Iranian enrichment sites. Seeing Pakistan's nuclear deployment and the burgeoning Saudi-Pakistani military axis, Israel, always hypervigilant, perceives an immediate existential threat. Fearing a powerful nuclear-backed Sunni NATO and a growing Iranian nuclear capability, it decides to act preemptively, launching massive airstrikes against Iranian enrichment facilities. This is Israel protecting its long-term strategic interests. Level 6. Tehran launches Shahab towards Riyadh. Enraged by the Israeli strikes on its nuclear program, Iran retaliates with its most potent conventional weapons. It launches Shahab ballistic missiles directly at Riyadh, aiming for symbolic and strategic targets, demonstrating its ability to hit the Saudi capital. Level 7. Pakistani official says all options are on the table. This is the chilling final step before the unthinkable. A Pakistani official, under immense pressure and facing an escalating regional war, publicly declares that all options are on the table. In diplomatic code, especially for a nuclear power, that's a thinly veiled reference to nuclear weapons. It's the ultimate threat, designed to halt escalation but also risking an uncontrollable spiral. Past Level 7, we're not just in uncharted waters. We're in uncharted thermodynamics. The controls are gone, and the region, perhaps the world, descends into an unpredictable, potentially cataclysmic nuclear exchange. This latter, while theoretical, is built on logical, reactive steps that have historical echoes in conflicts around the globe. It's a stark reminder of the fragile peace in a region bristling with advanced weaponry and deep-seated animosities. Section 11. Winners and Losers. In any grand geopolitical chess match, there are always winners and losers, even if the definitions are often fluid and subject to the whims of history. This Saudi-Pakistan pact is no exception, creating clear beneficiaries and those left scrambling to adapt. First, the winners. The Saudi monarchy. They gain a formidable deterrent on the cheap. Instead of pouring billions into developing their own indigenous nuclear capability, they've effectively secured a nuclear umbrella from Pakistan, enhancing their security posture against Iran, and reducing their reliance on what they perceive as unreliable Western guarantees. It's a strategic coup for Riyadh. The Pakistan Army. They secure both rent and relevance. The pact brings in desperately needed financial aid and deferred oil payments, essential for Pakistan's struggling economy. But it also elevates Pakistan's geopolitical standing, positioning its military as a crucial player in Middle Eastern security, securing its relevance on the global stage beyond just South Asia. China. Perhaps the quietest yet biggest winner. Beijing gets to watch two significant regional rivals, the US and India, tie themselves in knots and expend considerable diplomatic and military capital, all without spending a single yuan or firing a shot. The pact further destabilizes a region where China is steadily expanding its economic and strategic influence through its Belt and Road Initiative, creating opportunities for deeper engagement on its own terms. Now, for the losers, U.S. arms exporters. They face tougher competition. As Saudi Arabia diversifies its security partnerships and potentially develops indigenous capabilities with Pakistani help, the lucrative market for American defense contractors could shrink, impacting a significant economic and strategic lever for Washington. Iranian moderates. They lose crucial leverage. Any argument for rapprochement with the West or de-escalation with regional rivals becomes harder to make when hardliners can point to a nuclear-backed Saudi Arabia as justification for their own aggressive posturing and continued nuclear advancements. The pact strengthens the hand of the Revolutionary Guards and hardline elements. Indian strategists. They must fundamentally rebudget and rethink. Their long-standing strategic assumptions about regional power dynamics are shattered. They now have to factor in a nuclear-backed Saudi Arabia in any contingency planning against Pakistan, forcing them to reallocate resources and develop new, more complex defense strategies. European navies. They see their anti-piracy staging areas shrink. As regional tensions rise and alliances shift, access to strategic ports and cooperation for missions like anti-piracy operations in the Gulf of Aden and the Arabian Sea could become more complicated, impacting global trade routes, and above all, regional civilians. They gain absolutely nothing from brighter mushroom clouds. For the ordinary people living in the Middle East and South Asia, this pact only increases the risk of conflict, the specter of nuclear war, and the profound instability that inevitably follows. Their lives become pawns in a high-stakes game they never asked to play. Section 12. Diplomatic fallout. The immediate diplomatic fallout from this secret pact has been a cacophony of carefully worded statements, conspicuous silences, and nervous recalculations. It's a masterclass in global diplomacy where everyone talks, but very few actually act decisively. Turkey, ever eager to assert its regional influence, quickly offered to mediate. Its offer, however, was politely but firmly ignored by both Riyadh and Islamabad. Why? Because Turkey's own regional ambitions and its complex relationships with both Iran and Saudi Arabia make it a less than neutral arbiter in such a sensitive matter. Its offer was seen as more opportunistic than genuinely helpful. Egypt, another regional heavyweight, expressed a desire for a Gulf Cooperation Council, GCC mediation, hoping to contain the crisis within regional frameworks. But Cairo also fears its own NPT scrutiny. As a signatory to the NPT and a non-nuclear state, Egypt is acutely aware of the dangerous precedent this pact sets, and the potential for it to undermine the entire non-proliferation regime, potentially inviting unwelcome questions about its own nuclear ambitions. Russia, ever the pragmatist, has been notably quiet. Why? Because it sells nuclear reactors to both Riyadh and Tehran. This ambiguous stance, while seemingly neutral, actually serves to inflate the risk premium in the region, creating a demand for more advanced weaponry and security guarantees, which Russia is more than happy to supply. It profits from the tension rather than seeking to resolve it. The UN Secretary-General, as is often the case in such situations, issued a statement so bland, so devoid of specific condemnation or actionable steps, it could have been auto-corrected from a generic template. It was a testament to the international community's paralysis in the face of such a complex and dangerous geopolitical shift, highlighting the limitations of multilateral institutions when powerful states act unilaterally. Meanwhile, in the more practical corners of the world, British think tanks are diligently updating their Gulf risk maps, forecasting potential flashpoints and vulnerabilities. And Lloyd's of London, the venerable insurance market, didn't wait for diplomatic niceties. It swiftly raised insurance premiums on tankers transiting the region by a significant 8%. This isn't just financial speculation. It's a tangible, real-world consequence of heightened perceived risk, impacting global trade and energy markets. The pact's real diplomacy, therefore, isn't found in formal communiques or grand pronouncements. It's found in the noise, the strategic leaks, the whispers, the calculated silences. And in this new weaponized silence, the status quo of regional instability and nuclear ambiguity is only further entrenched, making the world a more dangerous place. Section 13. Future Scenarios. So, where does all this lead? When you inject a nuclear-backed alliance into an already volatile region, the future branches into a terrifying array of possibilities. Let's consider a few plausible scenarios, each with its own set of risks and rewards. Scenario A. Cold stability. Odds 40%. This is the most optimistic or perhaps least catastrophic outcome. Deterrence holds. The sheer threat of nuclear retaliation, however ambiguous, is enough to keep all parties from launching direct military attacks. Trade flourishes, albeit under a tense, watchful peace. Both Saudi Arabia and Pakistan boast about their newfound strategic depth, while Iran and Israel grumble, but ultimately refrain from overt military action against each other or the Gulf. It's a cold peace, a standoff where everyone is armed to the teeth but nobody dares to pull the trigger. The region operates on a hair trigger, but the fear of mutual annihilation keeps the lid on. Scenario B. Proxy spiral. Odds 30%. This scenario sees the deterrence hold at the state-on-state level, but tensions manifest through proxy conflicts. Low-level clashes in Yemen and Baluchistan, already simmering, escalate significantly. Iran and Saudi Arabia continue their shadow war, but instead of direct missile strikes, they funnel more resources, weapons, and training to their respective proxies. This proxy warfare then sucks in outside powers, as regional actors appeal to their patrons for support. The conflict metastasizes, spreading instability across the Middle East and South Asia, without crossing the nuclear threshold. It's a protracted, bloody, and devastating form of indirect conflict. Scenario C. Nuclear brink. Odds 20%. This is the heart-stopping scenario.
An Iranian missile test over the Gulf, perhaps intended as a show of force or a technical demonstration, is tragically misread by Saudi or Pakistani intelligence as a live warhead inbound.
The alarm bells ring, triggering a Pakistani deployment of its nuclear-capable assets to Saudi soil. The world holds its breath, fearing an imminent nuclear exchange. Thankfully, at the absolute last minute, a frantic flurry of diplomatic backchannels and a hastily established hotline deal between Washington, Islamabad, and Riyadh manages to pull the parties back from the precipice. It's a terrifying near miss, a stark reminder of how close the world can come to nuclear catastrophe due to miscalculation or technical malfunction. Scenario D. Treaty collapse. Odds 10%. This is perhaps the least dramatic but still impactful scenario. Pakistani opposition parties, smelling a loss of national sovereignty or fearing the economic burden and geopolitical risks, gain significant traction. They force a review of the SMDA, perhaps even threatening to unravel it. The Saudis, feeling that Pakistan's commitment is wavering and the political will is insufficient, walk out of the deal. The financial lifelines, the crucial aid and deferred oil payments dry up. Islamabad once again finds itself knocking on the door of the IMF, its economy in tatters, and its strategic gamble having failed. These are the odds, as analysts might see them. Place your bets, but remember the house in this game is history, and it always collects its due, often with devastating interest. Section 14. What happens next? So, with all this swirling uncertainty, how do we discern the true trajectory of this unprecedented alliance? What are the key indicators we should be watching to understand if this pact is solidifying, evolving, or perhaps even unraveling? First, keep a close eye on Pakistani troop rotations through Taif-o. This isn't just about presence. It's about integration. If satellite imagery starts to show sustained, systematic deployment of Pakistani troops, beyond mere ceremonial guards, through key Saudi military installations like Taif, it signals a deeper, more operational commitment. This would be a tangible sign of the military dimension of the pact coming to fruition. Second, watch if Saudi oil starts pricing in yuan. This would be a seismic shift. If Saudi Arabia, the world's largest oil exporter, begins accepting China's currency for its crude, it would signal a profound reorientation away from the petrodollar system and a clear underwriting of the alliance by China. It means Beijing is actively supporting this new geopolitical axis, offering a financial alternative to Western dominance. This isn't just about oil, it's about global financial power. Third, monitor Iran's 60% enrichment levels. If Iran's uranium enrichment drops from its current high of 60% back down to 20% or even lower, it could be a powerful, albeit subtle, indication that the Saudi-Pakistan deterrence has actually worked. It would suggest that Tehran perceives the new alliance as a credible threat and has decided to de-escalate its nuclear program in response, rather than risk further confrontation. If two of these three indicators flip, then we are almost certainly in a new, fundamentally altered equilibrium in the Middle East and South Asia. It means the pact has cemented its place as a transformative force. Beyond these external indicators, we must also watch domestic politics closely. Pakistan's tumultuous election cycle, with its frequent shifts in power and political priorities, could unravel this treaty overnight. A new government, perhaps one less beholden to the military, or more sensitive to international pressure, could force a review or even a withdrawal. Conversely, Saudi succession jitters or internal power struggles within the royal family could push the kingdom's policy even further into a hardline stance, making the pact even more rigid and uncompromising. Treaties between absolutist monarchies and fragile democracies, after all, often have the half-life of the weaker partner's parliament. It's a delicate dance, both internally and externally. Conclusion. The takeaway. So, what are we left with? Is this a truly secret pact, or an open secret that everyone is just pretending not to see? Either way, Pakistan and Saudi Arabia have just fused their deepest nightmares and their fattest wallets into one enormous high-stakes bet. Their gamble is that a potent cocktail of nuclear ambiguity and vast Gulf oil money can keep both regimes alive, secure and influential, even as America's attention and influence seem to be drifting elsewhere. The rest of us, unfortunately, are merely spectators in a stadium where the lights are dimming. The air is thick with tension and the scoreboard displays only one chilling statistic: minutes to midnight. This isn't just about two nations. It's about the future of a volatile region and the potential for a new, dangerous chapter in global nuclear proliferation. What do you think? Will this pact, with its blend of economic necessity and nuclear deterrence, ultimately bring a fragile stability to the region? Or will it become the very spark that ignites the conflagration the world has desperately tried to avoid? Tell me below, because the next story in this unfolding drama might just start with your comment.